And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have a magnificent guest with us tonight, one who is going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than the world renowned author, um, uh, someone who is the title of her book alone is going to make you all intrigued, and her story on TikTok is going to bring everyone in. None other than Miss Kiara Steven. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
The honor is ours. So we want to get straight into it. There's so much clamoring on social media about this book. How did the book come about?
Yes, this book is basically it's just my story. It's just my journey of how I've learned to draw near to God. I grew up in a very, I would say, hyper religious home. And as I grew and as I evolved, just as a young girl to where I am now, I started to realize that a lot of the religious upbringing and the relationship that I built with God was two different things. So it was really important to me to write a book to help young people or just anyone that's kind of like stuck in religion to really understand the relationship that you have with Jesus.
Mm,
And so basically, that's how it came about. So I just wrote my journey and my story. I think one of the biggest shock factors that I get is the title. And it's called Horror to Holy. And I wasn't necessarily referencing myself as a horror, but I talk about at a very young age, around fifth grade, and this story kind of went viral when I posted it. I had a church mother kind of make a scene. There was a preacher, we were at a visiting church. My father was a minister. And at this visiting church, the speaker was talking about how women were whores. And the church mother that went to our church, she was like in the pew before me. She got up and she made the scene and pointed at me, emphasizing that I was the whore that he was talking about. I had no
mm,
idea, what that word even meant at that time. And I just remember the kids like laughing. And it was just such like a confusing moment, but it was a moment that defined me and it just set a fire inside of me that like that was something that was unjust
mm.
and it just marked me forever. And so that's where the title of my book is, what people call you is not necessarily what God calls you. And so yeah, I just really wanted to just have something that's vulnerable, something that's honest, something that people can relate to. Not, I'm sure, not that certain experience, but church hurt and religion, and just this idea that people they say one thing about you, but God really says something else. So that's pretty much the summary of the book.
Yes, ma'am. Beautiful, and people are showing love all around the world. Peace, Mimi, righteous by nature. Thank you for always showing love, and everybody who's watching. Let's stay right there. First of all, shout out to all of the PKs like myself, my sisters, Mimi, Naima, Rashad, and
Yeah.
my brother Rashad. Everybody who grows up, regardless of what religion, there is a spotlight put on the minister, the pastor, imam, whoever who's in charge, and then those children and the wife, they're going to get pros and cons. What was the greatest trial being a preacher's kid?
Wow. The greatest trial, I would say, I guess the pressure. I guess I would say that like I just feel like you're born into this expectation, you're born into this pressure that you never asked for, um and so I think that's just, how the title even started. There's just this or there's this pressure or there's just this judgment, at PKs we have this preachers kids whatever. If your parents are in leadership, there's this idea that, the child is either going to be like their parents or they're going to wile out. It's like one or the other. There's no gray area, and in life there's very much so a gray area. So I think it's unfair, like like this pressure that's put on people. So I think for me as like a young girl growing up in this hyper, and I grew up in a very Pentecostal, like apostolic
Okay.
household, so there was just this pressure, this prejudgment that you were either going to be just like your parents or you were going to while out. And before I could even allow my life to live, people just made it prophesied over me. And so I think that's like really challenging thing. You don't get to be yourself, you don't get to express yourself, you're put in a box, and it's unfair.
I
Yeah.
agree. We agree. What about the greatest joy about your upbringing being the preacher's kid?
My greatest joy. I think the culture, that's another thing that on my page I speak a lot about because like regardless of the experiences, like you just can't get past the culture. Like the Black church culture, it is even though I don't necessarily believe all of the things that I grew up with, I had to do a lot of just unlearning, but the core of like who I am, like the consistency with church, you know what I mean? We were always in church, first one, two, three services, just like the devotion and the dedication that I feel like it brought me. It was a joy. It was annoying as a little girl, but it's something that like I appreciate that, I came from a culture that, they said to have these morals, you know what I mean? And this community that I feel like everyone can relate to, regardless if you had my dad as a pastor or whatever. So many of us, like, as Black African Americans or whatever, just this church culture, it's a beautiful thing to, be brought up in and have this relatability with other people.
Okay, incredible. Okay, there's a television series called Breaking Amish, and it's something I always speak to preachers, children of, regardless of religion. But the child gets to the teenager, gets to like 16, 17, 18. He has to decide if they're going to stay in a religion, do they go out into the world. As you know, we grew up in my family. You don't want to go into the world, you out acting worldly, but do you come
Yeah.
back? What advice you give to those young people right now who are at that crossroad making a decision? Do you test the waters of the world and think you're gonna come back to try your faith, or will you be lost? Like, what's your advice to the young people?
Yeah. So I think I would say, um, don't be afraid. I think again, as church people, it's always black and white. It's like the world or church. And I think you have more impact. I think there's just a greater influence when you kind of trail that gray area, but you have to have this foundation of who God is and his word and his principles. And so I wouldn't say like run away from the world because I think we live, we're not of the world, but we're in it, right? And it's for a reason. And so I just think you're just doing yourself such a disservice by running away from the world. You're doing yourself such a disservice not to even, be open. I think like there needs to be a greater conversation about the gray that you can have, the impact that you can have by just being a principled person, and being in it. So I would say I think wisdom is staying somewhere in the middle, but really focusing kind of what my book is talking about on your relationship with God and not necessarily the religion um, of it all. And I think the Holy Spirit, or, whatever you may believe in, that will
Mhm.
guide you. And you will realize that it's not as black and white as you may think. And there really is something to champion in that gray area of the world and, your foundation.
Okay, excellent, great response. Thank you very much. People are showing you love all around the world.
Thank you.
My sister Miriam says, "Thank you for sharing your truth. She appreciates this conversation. Thank you, Mimi, and thank you to everybody else who was watching. Once again, how can we get your book, man?"
Yeah, so my book is actually on Amazon. You can just on Amazon Books, you can just search my name and it should come up. Kiara Stevens, and if you just type "Poor to Holy," it should come right up for you.
Wonderful. There's a for us growing up, my siblings and I, many people, but primarily in our house, prom was a big thing. Religious people, they don't want you going to prom, cheerleading, sports. Like it was so much, what we can't do. And that
Yeah.
became a fight with our parents
Yeah.
and us because I told my sisters yesterday, matter of fact, we pushed back on so much, not necessarily the relationship with God, but the theology or the practice of it. We was like, nah, we gotta go to prom, we gotta go to dance, so things like that. What advice would you give to young people who are coming up who believe in God, love the word, from Genesis to Revelation. However,
Yeah.
they want to also have a dance, go to homecoming, play basketball, go, what advice would you give?
Yeah. I would definitely say, I think the number one thing I think for me, because I totally relate to all of that stuff. We could talk probably all day about, the similarities that, so many people have in this type of culture and foundation. But I think for me, I think there was a level of shame that I had because I wanted to do those things. And so I think the number one thing that I would say is to break off that shame of that young person or whoever that you want to go and do those things. I think, your family and your upbringing, it makes you feel like you're wrong. It's almost like gaslighting you to believe that you're crazy because you're just a kid and you want to do the normal kid stuff. So I think the number one thing I would say is don't feel shame about it. Like it's fine. It's normal to want to experience all those things. As, a Christian now, and I'm a mother, I'm a single mother. So I have a son that I'm raising, and it's really learning the balance of like, how am I going to raise him, in this world? I know there's going to be a time where he's going to want to do certain things. And it's so important for me as a mother that he understands the balance and he has a choice,
Mm.
but with wisdom. And so I think, like I said, the number one thing is not to have shame. And number two, you do want to respect and honor your parents. And it won't always be like that. I promise you. It will not always be like that. Maybe try and attempt, to talk to your parents. But I think the number one thing when you are a child in your parents' household is just don't let, bitterness start to go in your heart. Because I think that was one thing that, like, I was very bitter, I think, growing up towards my parents, towards a lot. And it eventually, I did wild out. Like, towards college, I was like, I'm out of here, like, I think there was a lot of bitterness that I held in my heart towards my parents and certain things. And I wish somebody would have kind of mentored me or put me to the side and, talk to me about, just my heart, experiencing all of these things. So I would say no, that, don't feel shame about that, but also don't harbor bitterness. I think, our parents, they do the best that they can with what they know. And, there will be a time and a place for you to experience all of the things that you want. So I think that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Okay, great. And people were, heart and thumbs up and finger snapping, all that good stuff. Once again, from horror to holy. Make sure we get it on Amazon. My next question for you, ma'am, is something that we deal primarily with the women. It's like the dress code. What was that like for wedding to wear and modesty? And how can we feel more normal in our skin? Men, it's more of my sisters would tell me that because the men, we don't have to really focus on the dress code, but that's something that young girls who come up in,
Yeah.
faith have to, decide and figure out how to navigate that. What advice would you give?
I think the advice that I would give is, again, having a different perspective about modesty. I think, unfortunately, the church gets it wrong with
Mhm.
modesty. And I think that's something that I struggled with as a young girl, because I just didn't understand the strictness of it all, because, the women skirts down to the toes, but, you would hear the gossip of what they were doing with these certain men of God. And I just was always a kid that just questioned everything. And I just didn't get the point of, why are you being so modest, but yet you're doing XYZ behind
Mm.
closed doors. The image thing, I just didn't quite understand. But I think what I would say is, it really is, a heart posture. If I had a daughter, what I would say is, it's not really even about the clothes. It's really just about your heart and how you
Mm.
want to show up in the world, and how you want to show up, with your brothers and sisters around you. It's not really about the clothes. It's about you. It's about self-love. It's about, protecting your body. And you as a woman, you don't want to be a woman that's known for your body and these things. You want to be known for, other better things. So I just feel like that's really how we need to tackle modesty. It's really from a place of loving yourself, that you're
Mm.
not going to show up in a way that, is disappointing to your parents. You don't want to be shameful in that way. And so it's really just a self-respect thing, I would say, more than it is a control thing, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes,
And so
ma'am.
I feel like when women have that, as young girls, when you kind of have that thing of like, oh, it's a way that I'm loving myself. It's a way that you can learn to express yourself. It doesn't always have to be a jean skirt, like there's other things that you can do. There's like leather. There's this, it doesn't have to be so black and white. There is creativity in your modesty, and it's really about self-love, and it's really about respect more than it is about rules and regulation.
Powerful. Okay, great. Now, are there certain what is your favorite chapter of the book? Like the title of something that we can uh tackle tonight, if you could, like, if you give us one of the chapters.
Yeah, sure. So one of my favorite chapters, it's towards the end of my book. It's a very short book. I wanted it to be quick, simple, everyone can get the point. And so it's towards the end of it, and it's kind of where I broke free, and the chapter is called Crying Out for Change.
Mm.
And at this point in my life, I have quite the story. So at this point in my life, just a little bit of background, I had almost died. I went to college, kind of wilded out, was starting to come back. I ended up getting pregnant. Um, and I was in religion, so I thought the best way to fix that was to get married. Huge bad mistake. Please don't ever do that.
Mm.
Married someone, was divorced, separated within the year. It was a horrible experience, super traumatic, should have never done it. And during the situation, while I was pregnant, I had this freak accident, and I had a brain bleed and I had a stroke. I almost died. And it was just this huge traumatic thing. And so after I had my son, I had epilepsy. I was having seizures all the time. And I just was like, God, I felt so suicidal. I felt like I failed as a woman because I was a mother. I always dreamed of being a mother. Here I was, I couldn't breastfeed my child. I was on all this medication. I just felt like I just failed everything in my life. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have money. And so I just said, God, it was almost just like a question of even my own faith. And I'm just like, God, like, if you are real, I cannot raise my son, in this way. Like, I need you to come and change me. I need you to do something about this. And so that's what the title is about. And I cried out for change. I prayed and I prayed. And there was three things that the Lord had me go through, these three steps, which was realization. So I realized, oh, the religion that I experienced, I realized I didn't know God. Like, I
Mm.
grew up in church my whole life, but I didn't know him. I didn't know him. I didn't have a relationship with him. And so there was this huge realization of all the mistakes that I made. I also talk about in my book how I was sexually assaulted by a married man at 14 due to the religious culture of purity culture, and you have to be married by 18. So at 12, 13, 14, I had this like thing on my back that I had to get married, and it was just this giant mess. And I ended up meeting this man online at 14, and it was just a disaster. Um, and so I just had this realization over my life that God, I don't know you. It was a realization, there was repentance that I took place. I just vowed and I said, God, like, if you're out there, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to live for you. Just show me who you are. Show me your heart. Show me how to do this thing. And did repentance, and then there was just like this restoration. And honestly, it was like a week of praying and fasting and seeking God, and I truly was never the same after that. And there's just a lot of restoration that happened for me. I had, because of the stroke and the brain bleed, I had a language disability. I had to learn how to speak. Had to learn how to walk. I was told by the doctors I would never be able to go back to school. I went to school in that same year. I graduated with my degree and bachelor in human services. I became a social worker working for the state. And so God just really began to restore me and restore my life. So there was just this restoration, that I believe God is still walking in, because I was able to write this book and help other people. So that's probably one of my favorite chapters of my book, is how I broke through and really learned God for myself.
Powerful. This is
Thank
phenomenal.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your transparency. You are helping heal many of us. Um, Wonderful Ishmael Wilson. Thank you for always showing love. My sister Naima says peace, family, peace, Naima, and she is the one who recommended you as a guest because she saw your TikTok, and she was like, "Gosh, you got to hear this."
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, great. We got to go back to the stroke and the faith that you had to have to hear what the doctors were saying, but then still call on God to make it through. How was that process?
It was probably just the most, I don't even, these are very dramatic words. This is how I felt. Groundbreaking, earth shaking, just like this major epiphany, Tyler Perry movie. It was insane. It's the craziest thing, but it marked my life because when I had this brain bleed when I was pregnant, it was never supposed to happen. The doctors literally were like, after, God restored me and I came back, they were literally calling me like, we want to do tests. We want to know how this happened. You had no reason for that to happen to you. Um, it was just a crazy, intense time, almost dying. There was a time in the hospital where as my brain was bleeding and I was literally like losing my consciousness, I had a moment where like my whole life flashed before me, and just crazy things happened. And I thought the next time I was going to wake up, I literally thought I was going to be in hell. Like, I literally thought, I said, God, I'm literally about to die in my sin with this baby in my belly. I'm really about to go like this. Like, this is crazy, God. I woke up and I saw life. I saw my family. I couldn't talk or I couldn't speak, but I woke up and I saw my family all around me. And I just said, you know what, God, you are real. You are with me, and you're realer than I ever thought you were. You're realer than the four walls of a church. And so when he woke me back up after that state of consciousness and I saw my family, I just saw that as a new way of life. And I just knew that he is real. He has an assignment for me. There's something for me to do. And so I just kept calling on, I feel like we hear that, call on the name of God, blah, 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 but that's really what it is for me. Like, and I keep calling on him and I will probably never stop. And he just always answers me, when I call. And so I think that was the main thing. It wasn't easy. Again, it was just devastating. I was 21 or 22. Yeah, I was 21 when this happened. And I like had to learn how to read. I had to learn how to walk. I had to go to physical rehab. I'm 21 sharing a bed, a roommate is like 80, 90, and I'm like, all going to all these doctor's appointments, and the older people that I was with, they're like, you're such a young girl. How are you in here? Like, what is going on? So it was a crazy experience, but I saw God's hand on my life, and I saw him just continue to bring me out over and over again. So I just kept trusting on that name, that if he's real, if he has all this power, he can do
Yes, ma'am.
something with me. And he did. So yeah.
Powerful. And my sister Lance is beautiful testimony, and people are saying, go off, yes, yes, yes. We want to make sure we get the book From Horror to Holy on Amazon Books. Let's make sure we get it with the incredible author, Kiara Stevens. We have a few more questions for you, ma'am, but we have a brief
Sure.
60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. We are grateful for every like, share, and subscription. Thank you all to everyone who does super chats and anonymous cash apps. 1 second. Here we go. Here we go. Academy. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country. Sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me children's book and coloring book. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ. My two books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse, both of which are available on Amazon. All right, wonderful. There we go. Right back to our esteemed guest. We want to go back to being assaulted. Unfortunately, that has been the reality of many men who have come forward lately, but primarily the women and young women who've been guests on my show in my life. What can we do to help prevent that, or when that happens, to help the women speak up when that does take place, especially younger women?
Yeah. My heart just goes out to anyone, that deals with it. It's really a painful conversation, just in our Black community, whatever community. It's just a painful topic to speak about. Men, women, children. It's so heartbreaking to me that I experience it, that other people experience it. And I think for me, it's just like, specifically for me and my culture that I grew up with, it's just not talked about enough. Like, it's just this thing under the rug that no one wants to talk about. And I refuse to believe in that, deal with that. Absolutely not. Like me and my son, ever since he was probably, he can talk. I'm like telling him his private area. This is your private area. This is your body. Like, we talk about this stuff because you have to. Like, you have to teach and you have to train your kids in wisdom. And unfortunately, not everyone are good people or whatever. So I just feel like if even someone would have had that conversation with me at a young girl, I think it would have made a huge difference for me. I think
Mm.
instead of talking about marriage, talk about the importance of your body and how it belongs to God and not just your husband. Because what if you don't get married? Like anything can happen. So I think just the context of how, again, in my personal household, um, we talked more about marriage than we did talk about, just keeping your body for yourself and for God. And I think that was just a no, it was not good because it just made me idolize. Again, something else I talk about on my page a lot is I idolize marriage. So again, like I was saying earlier, 12, 13, 14, growing up in this idolatry of marriage. I was 12, like looking for a husband. That's insane and is grooming. You know what I mean? Like it's sad. And so I think that it put me in situations that were very unfortunate. So I just think having just an open and honest conversation about protecting having your children, protect their bodies and realizing, no one's supposed to see this, no one's supposed to see that. Just those little conversations, they mean the world and they make a huge difference, as we grow up.
Excellent. This is profound. We have two more questions for you. Thank you again.
Sure.
On on a lighter note, uh, what is your favorite album of all time, ma'am?
Wow. um, Probably, huh. This is a good question. Probably Lauryn Hill live.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite albums. Yeah.
Okay. Now that's the first. Now Lauryn Hill, Miseducation Lauryn Hill, people say that all the time. That's like
Yeah.
top three albums of my guests that they bring up. But the
Yeah.
live one, that's the first one. Why the live one?
Yeah. I think the live one for me, I just resonated with it so much. I think the rawness of it, I think it was just revolutionary. Like you know, a lot of the things that she agreed with, what she stood for, wasn't accepted amongst like, culture, whatever, but it was the truth. And so it's just something that really resonated with me. She just came against a lot of like culture and a lot of things that were going on, like spiritually. It was really just one of those rat tat tat, coming against a lot of the things, that are not good in our life. And it's just raw, unfiltered wisdom of Lauryn Hill that you just cannot find anywhere. And so
Hmm,
I know everyone says that one, but for me, that's probably my favorite album of all time. I love it.
that's incredible. And lastly, ma'am, we want to know what advice would you give to future mothers?
The advice I would give to future mothers, is to know God. And I know people probably whatever, what, that's all you got to say. But honestly, I don't think that we know everything. I don't think our mothers knew everything. I don't think our grandmothers knew everything. But I do know that God does. And He knows our child, He knows our children. And so I want to mother, personally, my son, not because I want him to be like me, but I want him to be whoever God has called him to be. And the
Hmm,
only way that I can mother him and teach him is if I know God. And so, and if, the Holy Spirit guides me to, raise him in this day and age. So I think as a mother, I could say a lot of things, but I think the core of it is, my son hearing well done, my good and faithful servant by my God. And I just, I want to steward him well. And I can't do that if I don't know God. I want him to be everything that he's called to be in the earth. And if I don't know God, how can I mother him? How can I make him the best man he's called to be. So I think the greatest advice that I would say is know God for yourself so that your son can know God and so that you can mother him the way that God would want him to be mothered.
powerful. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes. All right. Great. And people, um, so Desiree says perfectly said. So people bear witness. Thank you, Desiree. People who are watching. Lastly, can you let us know where can we get your book one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is on Amazon. On Amazon Books, you can just type in my name, Kiara Steven. It's my only book, so it shouldn't take you much long to find it. Pour to Holy. You can also find me on social media, on Instagram, Facebook. I also have it in my link. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now TikTok is where my sister Naima recommended. I reached out to you. What is your TikTok again?
Yes, so my TikTok is it's my name, my nickname. It's underscore Kiwi Key, underscore Kiwi underscore Key. So it's Kiwi Key. It's my little nickname that I had growing up. So
Okay. All right, great. Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you very much for everybody who's watching. Let's make sure everybody around the world supports our sister and gets her book. We're excited, humbled. Thank you. Hopefully, this is just part one. In the future, any endeavors, anything else that you ever want to come talk about, feel
thank
right at
you so
home to come back
much.
and speak to us. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off of the People's Podcast. Have a good night, man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for watching.